Hey there, welcome into the RotoWire PGA Rundown Show. I am your host, Ryan Andrade. Joining me, as always, is my fellow golf writer at RotoWire, Mr. Lynn Hochberg. This week, we will be previewing all things fantasy golf for the WM Phoenix Open. We're going to touch on some DFS, some best bets, some one and done, some other predictions. But first, Lynn, I think we got to start with what we saw last week at the Farmers Insurance Open, just the clinic basically by Justin Rose. 45-year-old Justin Rose goes out there, wins by 7 shots. That's a scoring record, 23 under par. Just kind of talk about how impressed you were with what you saw from the veteran last week.
Yeah, it has to be the best single tournament of his career. He's won a major, but this was such a dominating moment. I mean, from the opening 62, he never took his foot off the gas. I wrote in my recap article on RotoWire that at the end of 2022, he had fallen to number 76 in the world at the end of the year, which I said wasn't half bad for a 42-year-old to be number 76 in the world at anything. So what's good for a 45-year-old? I said, would 100 be good? We're ranked 100th or 100. How about third? He is now third in the world. It's a truly remarkable story and a feel-good story. There's nobody has a bad word to say about Justin Rose. So, just great all the way around.
Yeah, no, it was crazy. I agree. I think this is the best performance I can remember from him. I mean, it basically felt like it was over Friday afternoon, after that 62 at the North Course, comes right back out, shoots a 65 at the much tougher South Course. And, just the way he was hitting his irons, it never really felt like it was ever going to be in question. It might have got down to 4 at one point, but, he was so solid over a lot of those, 48 footers. Never really felt like a doubt. So definitely extremely impressive here. I don't think we really touched on him much at all, if any, last week. But one guy we definitely did talk a lot about was Brooks Koepka. I remember you said that, if he just made the cut, it was going to feel like a win. Well, he made the cut on the number. Just sort of talk about your thoughts from Brooks Koepka in his first event back.
Yeah, I thought he was just in a very, very difficult position, create his own doing, but every spotlight, every ESPN was glaring at him, and he admittedly was very nervous, and understandably so. And I think it will take him a little bit of time to find his game, find his rhythm of the PGA Tour again. What we saw from him was a very wonky putter. He finished 74th in the field in putting and ended up, I think, T56, tied for 56. So he clearly talked about that in his post-round news conferences, that his putter had to get better. And if he would have putted better, just a little bit better, then maybe a top 25 would have been in the scope, in the range of possibility. Now he heads to Phoenix, where he's been very comfortable. He's won twice. He's had some other high finishes there. So it'll be very interesting to see how he does. And now he's got a little bit of a stronger field and may have to run into Scottie Scheffler at some point during the week. So I'm really looking forward to that. But interested in your thoughts on Koepka as well.
Yeah, I thought his ball striking was pretty decent, but yeah, you mentioned it. Definitely just couldn't quite figure out the putter. I mean, those are some tough greens, to be honest with, anyways, to get comfortable on. So, I think honestly, he's pretty glad the week is just over. He got that all out of his system. I think, every time I looked, he was doing some type of media. He was up in the booth with Jim for a little bit. He was doing interviews with Amanda after every round. So, sometimes that's what you have to deal with when, you're the reason that a lot of people are tuning in. But I think as we start, getting forward through the season, some of that media, requests, those sorts of things might try to die down, unless, of course, he starts playing amazingly. But yeah, I think he just wants to get into a rhythm here. And, there's a lot of good players that didn't make the cut last week. Xander Schauffele, one of them. Patrick Cantlay, one of them. So, just making the cut, as you said, I think was good for him. Some other just notes I had, Siwoo Kim, Pearson Coody, Ryan Gerard, they're the only 3 players to finish in the top 20 in all 3 events so far this season. So definitely good starts for all of them. But yeah, I think we can sort of transition over into the Waste Management Phoenix Open, or the WM Phoenix Open, as they now say. I can't keep track of all these little changes they make, but anyways, Len, this is kind of one of the best parties of the year. It seems like that just ends up, there happens to be a golf tournament going on at the same time. It's the most attended event every single year in golf. You got the 16th hole stadium. That's always insane. What kind of makes a successful player in this type of event? And, what are some of the keys you think at TBC Scottsdale?
We talk about, whether a player can handle the nerves of a major, a players championship, a big tournament. Can they deliver on the big stage? Well, this is a whole different type of big stage, and you could definitely get caught up in the moment, in the emotions, and it's not for everybody. Just like maybe Pebble or the Amex with pro-ams and stuff is not for everybody. This is a different type of not for everybody. So you have to be able to handle all that's going on around you to do well here. So that's one thing. And we see a bunch of repeat winners, and maybe that's because some very few guys can handle it. We've had a number of 2-time winners in the last decade or so. This week to me is all about ball striking. You don't have to be a really long hitter. It's only 7,200 yards something, and it's at elevation. So it's significantly shorter course. I don't know the translation, but it's got to be around 7,000 or maybe even a little bit less than six into the 6,000s. So it's all about ball striking and getting the ball on the green in regulation. And then you have to make some putts. The last 3 years, we have seen the scores elevated here. For a good number of years, we saw the winning score in the upper teens, 16, 17, 18, 19. But the last 3 years, it's jumped into the 20s. Thomas Dietrich last year, he's no longer on the PGA Tour, had the tournament of his life. He shot 24 under. He won by 7. For whatever reason, the scores have been in the 20s the last 3 years. You're going to have to make some putts. And I see every year that really critical putting inside of 10 feet goes a long way in determining who will win this tournament.
Yeah, I think you summed that all up really well. I had to sort of do a double take because I remember Thomas Dietrich won, but I didn't remember him winning by 7 shots. And then the fact that he can't even come back to defend his title. I think this, when I think about TBC Scottsdale, I think it's arguably the most exciting closing stretch in golf. You got those 2 reachable par 5s on the back 9. You got the drivable par 4 17th. You got a mixture of some really tough holes in there too. Obviously the wild 16th hole. That's probably one of the most straightforward par 3s on the entire PGA Tour, but there happens to just be an entire stadium of 20,000 people around. So definitely not easy for sure, but Scottie Scheffler's in the field this week, which means he's going to be the first name that we really need to talk about. Obviously, the last time out, won at the Amex. I remember we were kind of talking about that week and thinking, okay, this might be a putting contest. It's the first event of the season for him. Maybe he doesn't have his best stuff, and certainly proved all of us wrong. Does it feel this week a little bit different for you, that it's kind of just like win or bust for Scottie?
Every week when I go to make my picks, I always want to find a way to not pick Scottie Scheffler. I don't know, because I grapple with it. I mean, if I'm telling people to play Scottie Scheffler, I mean, duh. What am I doing here? They don't need me for that. But I couldn't find a way to not pick him. I tried. As I look back at last year, this was his worst tournament of the year last year. He tied for 25th. He had 20 tournaments. He made 20 cuts. He had 20 top 25s. This was the borderline. This was his worst one of the year. Now, last year is a little bit of an aberration, or a big aberration. He didn't win in his first 8 tournaments. He was coming back from the hand surgery, the Christmas dinner, the whole thing there. But he's a 2-time winner at this event and has played well in other years as well. So I think he's right there, in the betting market. What is he, plus 225 or something like that? It's probably not worth playing like that. But in the DFS market, yes, he will cost a fortune. Plus, I think he's 14,500. But I think it's doable this week, especially with a 123-man field and 65 in ties making the cuts. More than half the field will make the cut. A lot of the guys in the 6,000s are going to make the cut. You can definitely put in a credible lineup with Scottie Scheffler and not just, throw away the 5th and 6th positions. There will be guys who will get to the weekend and invariably get, a lot higher than their dollar amount would suggest. So, it's just, it's like lather, rinse, repeat every week. What do we do with Scottie Scheffler?
For sure. Yeah. What's crazy is this is kind of the event that started it all for him, right? 2022, it was his first win on the PGA Tour, won that in a playoff over Patrick Cantlay. And then you look, here we are 4 years later, he's got 20 wins. He's got 4 majors. He's got a FedEx Cup. He's got a gold medal. He's got all this. And, it's crazy how fast it all just clicked for him. He was, the year prior, he was on the Ryder Cup team because he had a, solid year in 2021, but, never won, obviously. But, I just think that confidence of, being able to get over the finish line first, go toe to toe with a solid player like Patrick Cantlay in a playoff. I mean, that confidence just really sparked. He won the Masters a couple months after that. And, here we are, as I said. So it's just crazy how fast that all sort of clicked for him. There's some other notables in the field for sure. We got Victor Hovland's making his season debut. Xander Schauffele, as I mentioned earlier, he actually snapped his cut streak at 72. Little asterisk there because quite a few of them were no cut events, but regardless, it's kind of unusual to have a golf tournament where Xander Schauffele is not playing on the weekend as he did last week. And then Jordan Spieth, I think probably should also mention, this is he's got a great record at this event. He's got 6 career top 10s here. This is a place where he's honestly played good when he's not playing good. So I think Spieth is definitely one you got to keep an eye on. You sort of teased it, Len, with the Scottie's DFS number, 14,500 here. I was kind of, grappling with this when I was writing my FanDuel article, and I was thinking, at that price, do you think he has to win or finish top 3 for you to recoup any sort of the value you're giving up by spending the extra, $4,000 to get him over, say, a Xander Schauffele or a Hideki Matsuyama or someone like that?
Yeah, he pretty much has to win. I mean, you could find a path. If he loses in a playoff and he's at 23 under and he's had a ton of birdies, the birdies, but that winning, that bonus points for winning is can really put you over the top. So I think he pretty much has to win. If you think Scottie Scheffler is going to win the tournament, then I think you should pay up for him. But if you just think, he's going to get a top 10, well, then I don't think that your money, your 50,000 can be dispensed in better fashion than that. That's an excellent question, an excellent point. It's something to grapple with every week with Scottie Scheffler now. Everywhere you go, any golf analyst, the first question is Scottie Scheffler, is he worth it? And I think he pretty much has to win.
Yeah, no, I agree here. Okay, so if say that you don't think Sky's going to finish, T8, T9, something like that. Who are, some of the other options towards the top that you would sort of tinker off Scottie in favor of?
Siwoo Kim, who you mentioned a moment ago, is the number 3 choice on DraftKings and did a little bit of a double take there. But he has been playing great. Not only does he have 3 top 20s to start the year, I think his worst finish was 11th. So he almost has 3 top 10s, 3 top 11s, if you want to phrase it like that. And, he's played well at this tournament. He's always been great tee to green. His issue has always been putting. And you got to wonder if he can get it into the 20s or so. But everything else about his game says he can do well here. So I do like him. And have a couple of other plays in the DraftKings 9,000 in my article. Cameron Young, who finally has won a tournament. He won the Wyndham last year, and he got it into the 20s there, 22 under, I think. So one of the things I always look, if the score is going to be in the 20s, some guys just can't get to the 20s. Some guys play well in more, bogey avoidance tournaments and 12 under, 13 under or something. And not everyone can really get that high score. But we did see Cameron Young do that. He putted so much better last year. And he's played well in this tournament. He's had top 10s here the last couple of years. And my last play in the 9,000s at 9,100 is Maverick McNealy. Maverick McNealy is a really quiet guy. He was top 10 last week. And I don't know how many people realize he was top 10 at the Farmers last week. I think he was 10th, so he's on the edge. But he's had a couple of top 10s at this tournament. He's 21 in the world. He does a lot of things well. He's not elite in any one aspect of his game. He didn't really contend for any titles last year, but he's had a lot of very good weeks. He's really anonymous in a lot of ways, but he's there a lot. He's in the mix, the peripheral of the mix a lot. And we talk about Scottie Scheffler at 14,500 as I look at my screen. Well, Maverick McNealy is $5,400 cheaper. That is enormous. And you can do a lot of things, a lot of, payroll flexibility or whatever you want to call it there. But I do like McNealy a lot, just under the radar a lot.
Yeah, I honestly don't remember CBS showing a shot from him the entire tournament at Torrey Pines, and I think he's like, I want to say he's a top 20 or 25 player in the world right now. So,
21,
yeah, McNealy,
21 in the world,
yeah, just always flies under the radar, like you said. Yeah, I mean, if we want to go down a little bit further to the 8K range here, I think the 8K range is pretty strong this week. Jake Knapp was one that stood out for me. I think everybody sort of knows him as a long hitter, but he's a guy that's just been putting it really, really well. He had a great putting season last year. So far this season has been great with the putter. He was T5 last week at Torrey Pines. He ranked 4th in strokes gained off the tee, 6th in strokes gained putting, 9th in scrambling, 3rd in putts per greens in regulation. He was T11 at the Sony Open. So definitely starting to really round into form here. 7 top 15 finishes in his last 18 starts overall. So Knapp would be a guy that I would look at. Mentioned him earlier, but Pearson Coody, I think he's just so hot right now. Another guy that's he's kind of the same build as Knapp, kind of a long hitter, puts it really well. I think his short game, though, this year has taken a really big leap forward, and I think that's why you've seen some more consistent play. He's kind of continuing a little bit from what we saw in the fall last year. 6 top 25 finishes in his last 8 PGA Tour starts. So he's definitely a good rhythm. And then one other guy that was just towards the top of the 7K range that I thought was interesting was Kurt Kitayama, 7,600. It's interesting, right? Because, you get the DraftKings salary, you get the FanDuel salary. They're usually pretty similar on where they put everyone, but Kitayama was a lot ahead of a lot of guys on FanDuel that he is below on DraftKings, which I thought was a little bit interesting. Sometimes you get those discrepancies there, but for me, he checks a lot of boxes. I mean, he's 10th in birdie average, 7th in strokes gained tee to green, 5th in proximity, 12th in putts per greens in regulation. And he was T8 at TPC Scottsdale in 2024. So got a lot of good experience all the way around.
And someone in your audience there is a big fan of
yeah,
Kitty.
I was about to say.
So
yeah,
I wanted to piggyback on Jake Knapp because I find what he's doing is incredible. He endured unspeakable tragedy late last year with the passing of his girlfriend, and he did not play the rest of the year. I think he entered one tournament, and I was surprised, and then he backed out after the field was published, and I thought, okay, he's just not ready to come back yet. Well, it can go one of two ways. I mean, you could really focus your attention and try and honor her life and go out there and play your best, but it's not easy to just say, I want to play my best and play my best. And, and he has to go on with his life, and golf is just a part of it. And he's just been incredible in this start back. I've been really surprised. It would not have surprised me at all if he had to find his way and miss some cuts and just had to, go back to living. So it's been really incredible. Two guys in the 8,000s I wanted to talk about. Sahith Theegala, who's had great success here. You talk about Scottie Scheffler was sort of known or was discovered sort of at the Phoenix Open. Well, Sahith Theegala too, 4 years ago, he ended up third, and that was a tournament he was battling with Scheffler and Cantlay and Brooks Koepka down to the wire, and he made a couple of mistakes at the end, but he finished third, came back a couple of years later, and he finished fifth. He had a terrible year last year. He was injured. It was just a complete waste, but he's had a couple of good starts already this year, and he's 15th in putting, granted just a few very small sample size, but this is probably a place where he looks forward to coming to every year, and he can handle the pressure that that we talked about, all that's going on. And Jordan Spieth is way down at 8,200. Jordan Spieth is probably going to be a pretty popular pick almost any week that he plays. But to Jordan Spieth at the Phoenix Open at 8,200, I think he'll be a very, very popular play. But it seems like a terrific price for someone who's finished sixth or fourth for the last 5 years. He's had incredible success here, as you mentioned earlier, even when he's playing poorly just about everywhere else.
Right. Yeah, for sure. I mean, Spieth, the thing is kind of one of those guys that a lot of people hope can sort of get back to, some of the play that we saw a few years ago. I mean, like, it's been tough, right? The last couple of years, he's dealt with the wrist injury. I think he had maybe a neck injury or something like that in there. But just a guy that kind of needs to stay healthy, I think, and he'll start to sort of figure it out. If we look a little bit further down, Len, say we start with Sky, we put Sky in our lineup. Obviously we're going to have to make some decisions, and we're going to have to probably get some guys from the 6K range, maybe the low 7K range, who are sort of some of the value plays that you think could make a run this week.
I have two guys in my article in the 6,000s, and one is Billy Horschel at 6,500. Billy Horschel made the cut here 10 years in a row until last year. And last year, we didn't know it at the time of the Phoenix Open when he missed the cut, but he shut down his season soon after for hip surgery. And so I imagine that he was at least in the beginnings, if not a lot more the beginnings of the trouble with the hip, and just did not get it done here last year. But he's another guy. He's not a long hitter. This course just works in his favor. a lot more than some of the really long tracks that are now on the PGA Tour. And Adam Schenk at 6,200. I played and had in my article Adam Schenk at 6,200 last week, and I don't really want to take too much credit for it because he had finished top 25 3 years running at the Farmers. And sometimes it's just like, even though he was playing poorly just about everywhere else, he would come to the Farmers every year and play well. I try not to overthink things sometimes. Well, he's not playing well. He hasn't been playing well for a lot of years. And well, he's also finished top 25 3 years running in Phoenix. And now he's coming off the top 25 at the Farmers. He was 11th at the Farmers, just missed a top 10. So he's really, a few years ago, he looked like he was on the verge of, I don't know, taking the next step and becoming a good PGA Tour player. It hasn't really manifested. He's taken some steps back, but he comes to Phoenix every year and plays pretty well.
Yeah, no, I agree. Sometimes keeping it simple is the way to go for sure. If we go over to the betting market here, obviously we've talked about Scottie Scheffler, heavy favorite, plus 225. Xander Schauffele's all the way back at 1,900. Then you got Cameron Young in there at plus 2,450. Just looking at sort of the outright market, I'm going to keep it simple and go with Hideki Matsuyama. He's at plus 2,500 in this one. He's got a great record here. I think other than he had to withdraw after the first round back in 2018. But other than that, he's made every single cut. He's got 2 wins. He's got 5 top 10s, 9 top 25s here. Great iron player, as we know, great short game. I think his sort of struggle over the last year has been a lot with the driver, which has been kind of weird considering, he's normally been a pretty good driver over his career. But I think this is kind of a place that you have a little room to spray it around. The fairways are a little bit generous. There's not too much rough to worry about. So, it's so funny because, Matsuyama finished, I think, T11 and T13 his first 2 starts this year. He still doesn't have a top 10 on the PGA Tour since his win at the Century last year. So, he's played good golf, just hasn't been up there. But I think he got a lot of confidence from outdueling Scottie Scheffler at the Hero World Challenge a couple months ago. And I think that could help them this week if they get into a close match, if they're in the final group or close to the top of the leaderboard. Anyone stand up to you towards the top that you like their value this week?
Yeah, I mean, it's always, the B flight, the non-Scottie Scheffler division. Who do I think is going to win? And my play this week is Cameron Young. He made his season debut last week. He had a top 25. Wasn't great, but dipped his toe in the water, back to tournament golf. I mean, that's a pretty good week. Scottie Scheffler might disagree that tying for 22nd in your first tournament of the year, but regardless, we talked about him earlier. He's got the victory schneid off his back. He won the Wyndham. He got it north of 20 under, which you will have to do in all likelihood this week. Not only has the score been in the 20s the last 3 years, but the conditions look pristine this week. Temperature around 80 every day. No chance of rain. Very little wind forecast right now for the entire tournament. I don't know if Thomas Dietrich's 24 under is in jeopardy, but that wouldn't be a complete surprise to me based on the conditions and what we've seen the last 3 years. And Cam Young has played well at this tournament and now putting better than I think he ever has before, or at least he was toward the end of the year. So at plus 2450 again with the odd DK Sportsbook pricing or numbers anyway, I do like Cameron Young.
Yeah, I like Cameron Young as well. I thought one more guy I wanted to mention was Ben Griffin at plus 2,900. I think he's obviously got solid win equity, won 3 times last year. I think he's getting a little bit overlooked. He finished top 25 in his first 2 starts, but I think the highest was like a T19, which where he was on some of the DFS pricing, on the betting board. I think people expected him to be a little bit better than that, but I still think that he is so solid all the way through the bag. He was top 60 last year in every single strokes gain category. I think, he's proven he can win on a really hard golf course like Colonial last year, and then he could win an absolute birdie fest like he did in Mexico in the fall. So I think Ben Griffin is a good option to look at here. Any sort of placement bets a little further down the board that stood out to you?
Bookies.com, our partners, they put out an article with a few of us every week, and we pick our winner, we pick a top 20 first round leader, things like that. And my top 20 in that article this week is going to be Jordan Spieth. I think the numbers, we talked about the DFS number of 8,200, it just doesn't seem to jibe with Spieth's success here at this tournament. It seems to be more in line with someone who's just playing like Spieth everywhere else. But he's plus 174, or he was at last look, for a top 20. You mentioned earlier he's had 6 top 10s here. So, and this is a top 20 play. So I think that's a pretty good play, and people might even want to take it one step further and play Jordan Spieth for a top 10 as well.
Yeah, no, I like that one for sure. I think I wrote a couple down here. Jake Knapp was plus 650 for a top 5 finish. Mentioned him a little bit earlier. He's just putting it so well right now, and he's shown the ability to pass, to be able to string together a bunch of strong finishes in a row. Matt McCarty, I thought was kind of interesting for a top 10 plus 455. He's a Scottsdale native, practices out there. I think one thing we haven't maybe touched on is the fact that it is at elevation, right? It's about 1,500 feet above sea level, so there is a little bit of an adjustment for some of these guys. When they're coming over here, there's a lot of work that's got to go in, Monday through Wednesday to be able to get your distances right, especially with the wedges. And I think a guy that's, that lives out there, is used to playing there, it's not going to be an adjustment at all. So that's an interesting point. He's a really good putter. And then I think Jacob Bridgman as well. He's plus 690 for a top 10 finish. And Jacob Bridgman is just the guy that he's had a lot of really high finishes over the last, year, basically. He continues to show this really high upside. He's got a pretty low floor as well, I would say. But, if you're betting on a guy that's way down the board to be able to get a high finish, I think he's definitely proven it that he can do that. So I like Bridgman. I think unless there was anything else on the betting board, Len, I think we could jump over to one and done. You good with that?
Yeah, just to close the loop there, I have Jacob Bridgman in my article at 7,100. I do like him. If you tell people that Jacob Bridgman, made the Tour Championship last year, some of you will look at some of them might look at you like, "What are you nuts, Jacob Bridgman?" But he was there, and Mr. Anonymous in the Tour Championship, and he's come out and he started to play well, pretty well this year, and so with that number that you gave and 7,100, we talked about having to get some lower price guys in the lineup. So do like Bridgman as well.
Yeah. All right. So everybody's favorite one and done. Last week, I did look this up. I had Chris Goddard. He had a T18. Lynn, you took Patrick Cantlay, who unfortunately missed the cut. But I don't think anybody in our league had anybody towards the top. So our good friend Lauren Jump, she is actually leading the RotoWire League. She's been on some of these shows in the past. She will be on in the future for sure. But I think she's only at like 800,000. I think she had a couple T6 finishes. I thought it's kind of interesting, right? Because we got 4 of the next 5 weeks are either a signature event or the players, so we're going to have major purses. Honestly, if you had these first, 3-4 weeks and you miss the cut in all of them, you're fine because, there's so much money that's going to be available coming up here. When we talk about strategy for this week, I think, we've kind of mentioned a lot. TPC Scottsdale is very, very sticky in terms of course history. Do you think we have to place more value on that than usual this week?
I think that that's part of the equation for sure. I mean, I always start with I'm going to pick a fairly highly ranked guy. I'm just never going to go. We've talked about this, the strategy of there are 30, maybe 32 tournaments, depending on your one and done league, how many they are. You don't have to go too far down the world rankings or the data golf rankings to find somebody here. You're going to want to use most of the top players, if not all the top players, at some point during the season. And so who's a guy who's really good, but I'm not going to play him in a major. I don't think I'm going to play him in a players. And for me, it's the guy who I think is going to win, and it's Cameron Young. I'm picking Cameron Young to win because I think he can win. If Scottie Scheffler doesn't, for all the reasons discussed earlier, he can go low. He's played well here. He had a decent start last week. And so Cameron Young is definitely a guy in my top 30 something, or everybody's top 30 something, that should be used in one and done this year. So I don't think I'll play him in a major. I don't see him winning a major. He could, but there'd be a bunch of other guys I'd pick before him. So this seems like a good place to use Cameron Young.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point, right? He's a good enough player where you're going to use him at some point this season, but, maybe not in, an event where you're stacked with all these top players right there. I think Cameron Young, he's also got like a very even keel sort of demeanor and mindset, which I feel like is good for a tournament like, this one. You think like Brooks Koepka's won here twice, like Scottie Scheffler's won here twice. Hideki Matsuyama, like none of those guys really get all jacked up or anything. They stay very level headed. So I think that's good. I'm going to go Hideki Matsuyama this week. I'm not going to overthink it. I mentioned it before. Course history is as good as anybody in the field. Confident from that recent win at the Hero World Challenge. And, if you need to go low this week, I think he's one of the best at doing that as well. So I thought about Ben Griffin. I hadn't used him yet. And I didn't think he'd be very highly owned in one and done, but I'm going to just not overthink it. Go Hideki. So yeah. Let's see. Score predictions. You think we hit 20 under par again this week?
I think so. I don't really know what has changed at TPC Scottsdale to just sort of change, because there had been like 7 years in a row where the score was between 16 and 19. It was very predictive. And then all of a sudden it wasn't, and it's not. And maybe now we have 3 years in the 20s, so maybe it's predictive like that. So what was the over under that I saw on golfodds.com? I'm going to look at my screen here and see what they had. 263.
It had to have been close to that.
The over under they put for this year is 263.5, which is 20 and a half under par. I think that, they're always close. They're very smart. They weren't close last week, but Justin Rose.
Who expected Justin Rose just have a legacy?
He blew past that at 36 holes. He blew past the over-under winning score. 20 and a half under. I'm going to go. I think it'll be 21, 22. I think, very light winds this week. Very perfect golf conditions. So whoever can handle the moment of all the chaos at 16 and elsewhere, I think we're going to see north of 20 and a half under.
Yeah, Isn't that funny? You know, last week was perfect weather. This week is perfect weather, while the rest of the country is freaking out about weather. It's funny how
Yeah,
that all works.
makes
But
fun to watch golf, I guess, if you're snowed in. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Here in Wisconsin, I can safely say that I am definitely jealous of people that are able to go outside and swing a golf club. That must be nice right about now.
I'm wearing
But
short sleeves, and I'll be out in short sleeves today. I won't be putting on a coat.
good for you, Lynn. Good for you. Don't have to rub it in. Yeah, no, I think it's probably gonna go past that. I would say it goes over that number. You know, I think what's interesting is there was a long run of the tournament being decided by either one stroke or in a playoff before, you know, Thomas Dietrich just absolutely blew everybody out last year. You know, this is definitely one where you tune in on the back nine on Sunday because there's all types of holes that you can see big swings at. You know, it's normally pretty bunched up. So I think we'll get a couple players that hit 20 under par, especially given the good conditions. But yeah. One other thing I had on here was, do you think we'll see an ace at number 16 this week?
You know, I don't think we did last year. I don't.
We did actually. It was
Oh,
Emiliano Grillo
oh
on
yeah. Okay.
Friday, and then
Yeah.
before that there was two in 2022.
Okay.
But
Oh,
there
so
was
we're a
like a
couple of
3 year
years.
gap.
So one in the past 3 years. How? Um, yeah, I guess I'll say no. I guess you can bet that, right? That's going to be
Yeah,
something that you can bet an ace on 16.
it
Uh,
is plus 280 for yes, minus 370 for no
no,
on
so
DraftKings.
probably,
So
if you don't think it's going to happen, probably not a smart play. But I guess I'll just say no. It's hard to get an ace anywhere.
yeah, you want to be that guy that just doesn't root to see anything and
I,
just
you
be
know,
so distraught when it goes in, when the hole in one goes
I'll
in.
happily be wrong. I mean, I'd rather see, Harry Higgs and Joel Damon take their shirts off and run around and lather up the crowd as if it needs any more lathering than see an ace. But I think, yeah, it can be some fun there even without an ace. Yeah. How about you?
I mean, I think you have to say yes just to be fun, but I mean, I think it's roughly we see one little over every 3 years, so it's the no is probably the smart bet. But I mean, come on, like who's not rooting to see one of those? It is, I will say, like, you know, this tournament is fun and it's great and everything, but it is a little bit ridiculous that we have to stop the tournament for 20 minutes because there's, you know, 20,000 beer cans on the green. But, you know, maybe I'm just yelling at a cloud. That's fine.
No, someone could get hurt. So, get off my lawn, get off my green, get off my, yeah, well, it's always going to happen. And it'll continue until somebody gets hurt, just like when kids play, you know, you know.
You remember the caddy races they used to do here? They used to have all the caddies. They'd be hauling the bags along with them, and they'd run all the way down to the green, and people would bet on that. And the tour just said we don't want to see anyone get hurt, so they put a
It,
stop to that quick.
yeah,
But
very easy to like tip over, I would think, with that bag on your back,
yeah,
one misstep and you're eating dirt. So yeah, I don't
literally
know.
dirt. Yes.
Yeah, I'm all for that. I'd like to see that. Why not?
All right. Well, yep. I think I don't know about you. I mean, there's a Super Bowl this week. There's a big game, but I am a lot more excited. Maybe I am being jealous because the Chiefs are not in it this year. My team for the first time in a while, but I am a lot more excited for this tournament than I am the big game. Do you have a prediction for Super Bowl Lynn at all, or no?
I don't know if I have a prediction. I'd like to see Sam Darnold win. I'd like to see the Seahawks win. Probably not. I mean, I'd like Sam Darnold. Seems like a likable guy, and he's had some, you know,
Been through a
Well,
lot, you know.
yeah, and plus I'm a New York guy, so I'm never going to root for Boston anything ever. Um, I don't know, it couldn't happen, but if like Boston and Philly ever played for a championship, and I guess that's not possible, they're always in the East or in the same conference or something. Or I guess Boston and Philly could play in the NFL, could play for the Super Bowl. I don't know what I would do there if the Patriots played the Eagles. Just hope for, I don't know, snow or something. But no, Sam Darnold, I'd like to see the Seahawks win. It's just an incredible story. They've been great. They've been great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I tend to agree. I think Seattle probably wins that one. I think New England probably had the just most easy path to a Super Bowl of all time, combining the regular season and the postseason. I think Drake May is going to be a good quarterback, but I think Seahawks are just a better team. So I think the last time actually that these teams matched up, it was in Arizona, and we had the head-to-head with the WM Phoenix Open and that Super Bowl there in the same year, obviously. So little interesting nugget there, but I think that's going to do it for us. We will be back next Tuesday. We'll recap the entire tournament, and then we will look ahead to the first signature event of the 2026 season. It's going to be Rory McIlroy's season debut on the PGA Tour. I think it's going to be Tommy Fleetwood's debut, reigning FedEx Cup champion. So that's always a good week. But anyways, you can follow us at Roto_Ryan and at Lent Hochberg on X, and check out our content on RotoWire throughout the week. We will see you guys next Tuesday.